So this video is going to be very simple. I just want to talk about some really interesting patterns of psychological warfare, and I want to talk about the subject of technically mind control, especially, right? Which is a really important topic because in this 21st century that we're in right now, psychology is like the biggest weapon that's being used against the population, and being targeted is being basically normal at this point when it comes to psychology, because I did work with hundreds of people who operate social media and things like that, and social media hires the best psychiatrists on the market to figure out how to keep you busy on their social media sites through content creation, right? Like, you have to be you're either addicted to the sadness, or you're addicted to the dopamine, the basically feeling like you're popular, but you're not really popular. And that's what a lot of people don't understand, because as a network engineer, as somebody who was doing cross connections and fiber optic operations and stuff like that, not just here in the US, but globally, I have friends in really interesting places, and they have what it's called view bots, right? Where people get organic views. They have those in India, very poor places, as well as Africa, and they have places in China where they have warehouses full with cell phones, smartphones, and they have bots watching women's video on either TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube, and then they have bot generating comment for live streams or online gaming sessions. But in actuality, they're just promoting themselves as having popular social media views and stuff like that. So psychiatrists and all these other places, they promote all these sets of online influencers in order to dictate the minds of the new population, to turn them into basically useless morons and consumers who are addicted to that instant gratification, so that they can promote an item or sell, make us like $1 billion sell on merchandise or things like that, in order to basically facilitate different fractions of psyche and human psychology and things like that. I have a huge background in hosting these services, not just in South Florida, but California and all these other data centers that they operate, these cross connection farms, because they have what we call subdomain masks, right? Where people lease 100,000 subdomain names, which is US IP addresses, like organic IP addresses, where these bots from all over the world, they get assigned proxies and they start listening and watching American videos, and it looks legit, like it looks like the person is actually popular, but in actuality, like, there's nobody watching their videos. They're just being promoted to cheat the algorithms of mega social media platforms in order for them to be popular and things like that. So what they do is that they promote a bunch of food services, they promote merchandise companies, they promote different fashions and stuff like that, in order to create a multi-million-dollar online business that way. And not only that, they promote a lot of artists, a lot of musicians, a lot of people like that. So what is causing is that in this 21st century psychological warfare that's being played on a population is almost like an invisible war, where governments and agencies and third parties, as well as corporations, they go out into the population as a whole, and they start studying people based on what their likes are, based on what they're buying, based on basically what gets your attention is extremely important. And what I saw during these massive data centers is that they even use spam bots, like online spams. When you get a bunch of spam in your email, the idea is not to make any profit, but to sell the traffic for to somebody, in order for that specific company to get promoted, or for them to figure out what got your attention, so that they can create an entire algorithm based on what your desires are, based on what you were looking at, based on what caught your attention. So sometimes you might get a spam that doesn't make any sense, but the whole idea behind the spam is not to make any sense, but to understand what caught your attention to begin with, and why did you click that button, and things like that. It could be e-cigarettes, it could be pornography, it could be a makeup tutorial, it could be hair loss, it could be hundreds of things like that. As long as they can target a specific age group of people, then they can figure out what caught their interest and things like that. For example, Google and Facebook had metadata collection to figure out who was sick and what season people were sick, who got the flu, and what people were basically searching for, and when did they get sick, and when did their immune system basically got weak, which is like usually it's in the winter and things like that. And then they can sell all that information to pharmaceutical agencies. Hold on. Sorry about that. And then they can sell all these information to pharmaceutical agencies. I shouldn't be talking right now, but there you go. Killed it. Multi-million-dollar drone, basically. Anyway, the whole idea behind this is to sell these information over to pharmaceutical companies, so that they can produce a vaccine, or they can sell Tylenol or things like that. So what I really want to talk about is psychology in the military level, as well as foreign actors operating inside the United States of America, because this goes into the military side of things. Because as a network engineer, as a person who was doing a lot of cross communications and cross connections between soldiers in in live on the ground battle, I saw a lot of things related to third party psychological warfare being played on the population. Like the whole idea behind brown people being rapists, and the whole idea behind the psychology of framing a specific race of people was basically to change the population dynamics of certain states, so that they can focus on a population growth on red states and things like that. It gets political, it gets military and political. Like, it gets really bad, because they start dividing people in certain categories to see where and how they can get votes from different radicalized groups of people and things like that. So when presidents, when they go into mainstream media and they say a bunch of shit, they're not just saying it because they're just reading a script. They're just going by algorithm-based scripts. How can they target a specific group of people? How can they get radicalized people? How can they get Christians? How can they get Mormons? How can they get Catholics? How can they get women? How can they get hundreds of people, especially in red states? So what they have to do is basically frame like a bunch of people as rapists, frame as China is like Asians are really bad, or you can frame black people for being basically thugs, and they cherry pick specific categories of the news in order to frame a whole race of people to push an entire state to vote for a specific candidate. But in actuality, like I actually work at the Mexican border. I do a lot of import and export for all these mega international Fortune 500 companies. I have my own logistics and I run absolute everything. Like, I run for one of the biggest Fortune 500 companies inside the United States of America. That means like all of the franchise that you buy your stuff from, I work with those companies. So you have to understand is that when I was working at the border and things like that, at El Paso, Laredo, and at the southern border, and all these other places over there in Texas, I didn't see criminality. I didn't see rape. I didn't see like I'm working really close with the border. Like I go face to face with the border because that's where we get 99% of all our merchandise comes from Mexico, and criminality there is just like nearly zero. Um, I spend over, I don't know, like I spent a good 3 4 years in Mexico and at the border, and they have incredible food. They have really good drinks, good people, hardworking, and I was looking for signs of prostitution. I was looking for signs of all these bad things that the TV tells you. I couldn't find much. There was like every now and then they would catch a specific group of immigrants going inside the nation. I did saw that like every 3 months or so. But when I looked at all of those immigrants, I didn't see rape. I didn't see any signs of drug use. I didn't see any signs of panic or them looking for a way to rape as many Americans as possible. Those are just, they work through insecurities on people in order to antagonize and frame an entire group of people as rapists. And it's just really diabolical because as soon as a candidate leaves the White House, like Trump did, it leaves like a huge mental scar in society for the next guy to go in and basically scare the living shit out of the American people in order for him to get votes. And that this is what's happening right now in this nation, in this 21st century psychological warfare operation games. And for me, that work on the background here, the time is running out, and there's going to be a huge crisis right now because this nation is so divided that is making very very easy for Russia, China, and all the these mega nations like India, Russia, China, and the BRICS countries to get together and target the US because we're so divided. And so what is going to be happening is that a lot of people are not going to, if a war breaks out, people, especially people like me and a bunch of other people, the minorities that they call quote unquote, are not going to want to fight for a nation that has been calling them rapists and thugs and all these other things. So that's going to leave just conservatives and Christians that's going to be drafted into war. And there's not many of them. There's, the population in the United States of America total is like 350, I think it's 312 million people. So you look at a population dynamics of that, that's what 40% of the entire population are elders, people who are not able to fight in the front lines. You got the new generation who's just attached to social media. They have no clue what is going on. And then you got the millennium who are like us, who've been in debt for our lives and our entire lives with student loan debts. The housing market just completely destroy our prosperity of a future. Our generation is not gonna go fight for a war. We've been seeing a 30-year war that we left billions of dollars over to a bunch of terrorists in the Middle East, and we passed the Patriot Act here that completely destroyed our national sovereignty and freedoms. And this is not like a political video, but that's the truth of the whole thing that's happening. And so this whole psychological operation that these cheap shot corporations and political prostitutes are doing, it is causing long-term effects on the population where it's going to leave the United States of America very vulnerable. And if a war breaks out, there's not going to be that many soldiers that's going to fight a war. And on top of it all, we're sending a bunch of equipment over to Ukraine, and we're not even making any more F-37s or F-35s or F-22. We're just not making them at all. We don't have the parts for it, and we don't have enough Stingray missiles on hand to fight a conventional war or a urban warfare in a mega metropolis or big cities and stuff like that. We're just not equipped. But logistically, where I work at, there's not enough supplies to maintain a war, especially in homeland. There's lots of weapons. Everybody has weapons, but nobody is really prepared for a chemical warfare. Nobody's really prepared for like COVID-19. Nobody's prepared for a mega virus that's being released. There's not one bullet that you can fire at airborne diseases and things like that. So the American people were just like, oh, we're just going to buy as many weapons as possible. And then China and everybody else just release a massive bioweapon, wipes out, what, 20% of the population. You got 40% of the population are elders. And then you got the rest of us who are just like, oh shit, we got to protect the nation. And it's just like, but wait a minute, aren't we a bunch of rapists to begin with? And it's just like, wait a minute, I got hundreds and thousands of student loan debt. I can't afford to go to be drafted or volunteer to war. So, could you imagine that? And on top of it all, we have 10% inflation on our everyday items as well as fuel. And then you got the IRS knocking on our doors looking for money. So things are not looking good at all inside the United States of America. This division is going to put this nation in great harm. It's already in huge harm's way, because if we couldn't win Afghanistan, if we couldn't win Iraq, if we couldn't win Libya, Lebanon, and all these places, what makes you think we're going to win a war against Russia in Ukraine or 1.6 billion people in China? It is ridiculous. There's not enough missiles or supplies to kill 101.6 billion people in China. Even if we bankrupt China, they already have all the military power, and Russia as well. They're all one, working and helping each other's hands. So things are not looking good. In terms of Mockingbird operations and stuff like that, I mean, just look at me, like, for a guy who's just been absolutely alienated and isolated from society because of this Mockingbird media operation. It's not a feasible future ahead on the top of massive psychosis, psychological warfare. It is impossible for me to go out there and not be looked at wrong or being looked at weird, basically. And it's like one of those situations where here, especially here in Florida, where you got Disneyland right there, who was operating like one of the biggest Mockingbird, MKUltra propaganda, mind control operations to get people to visit Disney and get people hooked on all these crap that they're doing because they're not getting enough visitors there, and they're just operating horrible psychological warfare, especially the church. Number one that I saw out of the military, especially out of the Pentagon, for psychological warfare operations was church leaders, community leaders. They were saying that if you're not in control of community leaders, then the enemy might get control of the Americans' minds if anybody gets inside the church. So every single person, I would say almost 80% of your pastors are working for the government in order to not just push an agenda, but if a war ever breaks out, your pastor is going to say, yeah, go kill because God loves America and you have to go kill. And this is what happened in Iraq and Afghanistan and all these other things. Like, people were just like, yeah, these are enemies and you're going to have to fight, or you're going to be speaking Muslim or whatever. You're going to be speaking Arab in a couple years from now. Or like they were saying that that Muslims back in the day, I remember when the red states were trying to brainwash a bunch of people in Texas, which is really religious state. I actually lived there in Texas when I was pushing stuff there, and they were saying that if we don't kill any Muslims, that was like back in 2008, that they are overpopulating the world with a bunch of children and we have to go kill them, otherwise we're going to be speaking Arab if we don't kill them. And then that left us 30 to 50 trillion dollars in national debt because Muslims were overpopulating the planet. And that's what all these conservative political prostitutes were actually pushing down on the population, was the idea that you had to go to war to stop a bunch of Muslims from repopulating the world. And you got these people who are hooked on Fox News and all these other places where all it takes is just like one political speech to just turn a whole nation into a bunch of hatred demons, basically, where these guys got a Bible on their hands and a gun on the other. It's just like, we gotta kill those rapist Mexicans, all these Black Lives Matter thugs, and all these. It's basically straw man argument in order to frame an entire race of people by cherry picking specific news references over what's really happening in order to push an entire political establishment for one side or the other. But at the end of the day, we're all paying taxes. And what's really funny about these, not just conservatives, but leftists, is that every year the blue states fight against the red states to take everybody's guns away. And then it's like, we got all these conservative people funding, giving money to the government to keep their Second Amendment rights. And then you got the left giving them a bunch of money in order to keep their, leftist democratic governments or infiltration of the government. But at the end of the day, we're all funding the same people. It doesn't matter if you're on the left or if you're on the right. At the end of the day, we are giving money to the same people to keep our rights. And it's just like, oh no, we have to fight, we have to fight, we have to fight. Otherwise, they're going to take your constitutional rights away. And it's just like, well, the Patriot Act did that. If you read the Patriot Act, really, there's a fine line there that states that if you're considered domestic enemy of the United States of America, you lose your constitutional rights. So that means that it's anything, whether it's your political view, whether it's religious views, whether it's absolute anything. The federal government can frame you over absolute anything. And that's their whole job. The whole purpose is to radicalize you so that they can take your constitutional rights away from you. And then say that, see, that guy is radicalized, is mentally ill, and he no longer deserves to have a weapon. And this is why Trump was saying back in the day, like, hey, we got to take the weapons first. We got to take the weapons first before due process and stuff like that. So this is where we're at right now. And I don't like to get political. I just like to talk about the psychology of things, how they can get entire populace in order to push them from side to side to get as many votes as possible. And what's really concerning to me right now is that it's leaving long-term scars on the American people's mind. It's gonna leave this nation basically defenseless, because you got a bunch of people who are radicalized, you got a bunch of people who are pissed off, and it's like people no longer care about anything or protecting or having, happiness and prosperity in a nation. It's just putting in each other's throat. And then if an enemy ever comes in, or if something blows up, or if a war breaks out, guess what? Not that many people are going to go fight to protect America to begin with. So it's just absolutely disgusting what is happening. And what's really terrifying is that here in Florida, there is hundreds of British assets as well as German assets. And here in Florida, especially when I was doing psychological evaluation of the populace where I'm at right now, like everybody have this pride of just like, they're not even considered themselves Americans. They talk about being either 4 or 5 generation Americans because they have a lot of pride of being German or Europeans and stuff like that. So they don't see themselves as Americans. They see themselves as 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 generations that could that could give the enemy a huge advantage over the American people. Why do I say that? Because it's really easy to turn those people. It's really easy to turn those people. All it takes is like a school out of a Kremlin, because they have the best schools for psychology. The Kremlins and the Russians are absolutely terrifying as psychological warfare, especially the Germans and the UK, who were running their Monarch program of mind control. But what really scared the living shit out of me is how the Kremlins have the best schools of infiltrations, and they use pure blonde European Germans to do half of their infiltration. And it's really easy to go inside the United States of America and push certain groups of people based on their race, based on their radicalization views, and then get them to tell you information. And this is how I'm seeing, like, China already got F-35 nose for their aircrafts. Can you believe that? Here in Florida, we have one of the biggest defense contractors ever. I was working for them, which was Martin, and I was making all these afterburners for F-35s and things like that, drones and missile systems and things like that. And what do I see? Germans. I see all these people. I see Koreans working there. I see Asian, all sorts of groups out of the European Union already working inside those facilities. So guess what? It only took like 4 years for China to develop the same technology of the modern, fifth generation of fighter aircrafts. Now they have it. Now Russia has it. Now Russia has a hypersonic missile, and the US failed multiple missile tests. And it's like one of those things, like I keep trying to tell people as much as possible to be very cautious about your race, right? About your people, because that's what the Kremlins are looking at. That's what the European Union is looking at. That's what the Indians are looking at. The Indians have a town in India where it's just pure blonde Europeans, but they're 101% from India. They can go into any towns and be German. They can go into any town and be Russian. They can go to any town and they sound like Americans. They sound 101% American. Like, it's absolutely absurd. So they can just go in, they can get jobs, they can get everything paid for, and the church here inside the United States of America pays for it. What I'm really, 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 really concerned right now, especially in Texas, when I was running over there, I saw a bunch of Ukrainians out of Ukraine. Like, all the Russians that I met from Russia, from Moscow, from St. Petersburg, who are like European as it can be. The only way for them to get out of Russia is to get a Ukrainian passport and then come to America. And then in Texas, they have an open policy for all the Ukrainians escaping going into Texas. And I'm just like, and then you got all these conservative puppets running around talking about how we got to save all those white Europeans in Ukraine because our church, really needs those people, because the rapists across the border are raping all our women. We need as many Ukrainians as possible. And the Russians are just like, well, we control all the embassies in Ukraine, so I guess we're just going to send our people there. They got open policy for our people. Ship them out. And then as soon as I got, to Texas there, I was just like, what is this? I see a bunch of Ukrainians there. I'm just like, oh. Pretty soon, what are they going to have? Are they going to have a fifth, sixth, 10th generation of fighter jet pretty soon? Because all of these Ukrainians are going to be getting defense contractor positions in Martin and all of these places like that. They're probably going to have a landing rocket pretty soon, because Tesla is already moving their facility to Texas, and now they got a bunch of Ukrainians looking for jobs there. So it's just, this shit is absolutely ridiculous, man. It's just what I'm seeing that's happening inside the United States of America when it comes to psychological warfare. People are not paying attention to their surrounding. I was actually part of a victimhood of the basically of the Monarch shit that they were playing here. And there's a church in Jupiter where they assign these British girls over to me, and they basically use psychology. They use alienation and psychology in order to get me to feel like I wasn't fulfilled enough so that I would work their job as a slave without knowing, because my desires was to keep a strong family household, and they used that as an advantage in order to use me as a slave. So they assign you perfect white couples to you, right? They assign like perfect girls, perfect looking models, and then everything fails, right? Everything just absolute fails. And then they offer you an opportunity like, oh, we have this position here, maybe next time you're gonna be able to sustain a relationship and things like that, right? And so you're just like really like, oh man, that sucks. They play with your broken heart relationships in order to hire you into a specific position so that you work as a slave, thinking that you're going to be able to sustain a family or a household or things like that. And so what happened is that it's just really messed up, because what happened is that all these agencies got exposed here in South Florida, and they, the federal government, the entirety of the federal government got replaced last year. And then I was recruited into another position in Virginia, working for private contractors over there. And it's just like, I saw the same entities, the same agency that fucked me over here in Florida, in Virginia. So what they do is they assign all these people into a specific county, specific community college, what they call it, in Virginia. And they have these agencies, right? You got Germans, you got the British, and you got the Ukrainians, you got, who else I saw? Oh, the Chinese is all over DC. Basically everybody out of the UN is in Virginia and the Washington State, and in Washington, in DC over there, in the District of Columbia. And what I saw was just like, they assign all these people in academia, and then they use peer pressure, community mobbing, in order to push different groups outside a specific place in academia so that they can be recruited into the federal government. So they have like mobs of people, community mobs, all studying academia, all fighting one another in order to get a degree and then work for the federal government, to infiltrate the federal government that way. So what happened was that, when they were clearing house in the Pentagon, they replaced the entire federal government because it was all infiltrated, because they had all these communist ideologies trying to arrest a bunch of conservatives like they did with Trump, in order to basically, they infiltrated the entire DNC. Could you imagine? You got German intelligence, British intelligence, you got all these people out of the European Union that infiltrating the living crap out of DC, the District of Columbia, and the DNC, which is the Democratic National Convention. And this is why, like, fraction of the government that was working with Trump was able to replace all these federal agencies with decent Americans, like soldiers inside the U.S. military and things like that. But even then, half of everybody inside the reserve and the National Guard are these assets of the European Union. So it's just like, it's an absolute cluster fuck, because you don't know who is who, what's what, and what is going on anywhere anymore. So that leaves leaves a huge scar on the brown population, because not only half of the brown population inside the United States of America was framed as Muslims, the other half was framed as Indians, the other half was framed as terrorists, the other half was framed as Hispanic rapists. So you got all the brown people radicalized to hate America at this point, because they're all alienated and isolated by these European UN bodies, right, of these community organizers. And then the other half, you got half of the European Union trying to infiltrate the federal government so that they can basically control the international commerce and trade agreements and different things like that, in order for Europe to get a better trade deal or international trade agreements and stuff like that. So they got the UN, everybody trying to fuck with the entire United States of America. And then you got the other side, which is a bunch of black people, brown people, all radicalized, isolated, fucking basically mentally radicalized. And so, and then you got the church, who's been absolute infiltrated here in Florida, and with hundreds of agencies using brown people as slaves in order to push their community mobbing. And then they got a bunch of community mobbing in Virginia, infiltrating the federal government to get into the federal government to begin with. So this is the shit that is going on inside the United States of America, and time is already like running out, because shit is going to hit the fan pretty soon. Why do I say that? Is because BRIC nations are seeing that this clusterfuck of mess is not sustainable economically. So the Dubai people out of the European Brotherhood, not European, the Muslim Brotherhood, and all these people in the Middle East they're limiting oil exports. China is they stopped exporting everything. The only reason why I'm here at this point is because China is not importing anything. There's nothing coming in from the ports. And people, the brown rapist guy here, we don't have any more jobs to go rape over there at the border anymore. So we can't import anything inside the nation anymore because China is not exporting anything. India is doing the same shit. India is pissed off because they don't have any water. And China was stealing water from them, and they're just like, oh, you know what? So fuck everybody. We're not going to export anything. So the whole world is pissed off, and nobody's exporting anything. And Russia is already shutting their gas supplies over to Germany, because Germany, they got their agencies everywhere fucking with people. So this is what I have to say, man. It's just the cluster fuck that is happening inside the United States of America. It is absolute fucked up. And this is what I have to say on this video. I know it's really controversial for my channel, especially with the new viewers and new people subscribing to my channel. But this is what's happening on the background. No one is going to talk about this. And I hope you understand. I hope you guys are prepared, because there's a lot of crazies out there. There's a lot of people who are radicalized. There's a lot of conservative dumb shits who are just going to be running around talking about saving the white race, while the white race is a bunch of agencies out of Russia, Ukraine, and European Union, as well as the Germans. So there's not really a white race to save here. Honestly, there's just agencies radicalizing the American people and recruiting Americans to get secrets out of defense contractors and things like that. And then you got Snowden, who ran to Russia. Could you imagine that? A national security officer out of the NSA got extremely angry at everybody and leaked hundreds of classified documents over to Russia, as well as the whole world. So not only the enemy has access to our communications, not only the enemy has access to what the NSA knows, but now they have an advantage on how to go undercover and operate electronic encrypted communication devices that way. So it's just, you have to understand, man, that like the shit that we're in right now is really bad, man. Is really, really bad. If you knew what was going on behind the scenes, you would be shocked. And don't even get me started on the IDF and the Mossad agency's intelligence covert operation that they run. My God, if you knew how Mossad agencies operate, you would be scared of how these people operate, because they are the most vicious agencies you can think of. When I say vicious, I'm saying vicious. The Mossad agencies, the way they operate, not only community mobbing, but the way they operate church organizations, the way they operate information. The data centers that I was in, 99% of all data center operators were either ex-IDF soldiers or somebody who's just happened to be Jewish. And it's one of those topics where if I talk about it, it's just like this is going to get controversial, but like it is absolutely vicious. The way they operate inside the United States of America is just like, holy shit. They have access to everything. I'm talking about everything. Like, just go on Google and type in Israeli spies get caught stealing state secrets. Okay? And then 5 to 20 years later, not one of them got caught ever again. Okay? 10 years ago, a bunch of Israelis was getting caught for stealing state secrets. It's been 20, 30 years. We haven't got a single news out of the federal government talking about Israeli spies stealing anything. And when I say things like that, it means that they have access to everything. We're talking about hospital, just everything. The scariest groups out there is the Israeli intelligence agencies. And I wouldn't mess with those guys at all, because the federal government has their hands tied. And if I say that the federal government has their hand ties, that means that the Israelis, they have something very powerful, which is extreme classified psychosis, mind control, nano devices that come straight out of MIT. Okay? That stuff that's way beyond that the Pentagon can ever succeed. And when I was talking to a bunch of U.S. soldiers out of the Pentagon and stuff like that, and close friends of mine, what they were saying is that the Israelis basically, they have technologies that is beyond, and the chemical warfare that they use in hospitals, especially with medicine that comes from China that they have access over, they can absolute fuck you up when it comes to health, when it comes to food, when it comes to anything. They will fuck you up. And they control 90% of absolute every churches inside the United States of America, especially in Texas. So for them to implement a person there is really easy, and then for them to poison you is even easier. And if they want to inject you with any chemical bio-test agent, they can do that. The Israelis operate outside the UN war doctrines and stuff like that. They have their own sets of rules, and if they don't have any boundaries, they don't follow rules. They do what needs to be done, and that's what's scary about them, because the federal government doesn't fuck with them. And this is what's happening inside the United States of America. You got people like me who has a little bit of shade of brown, completely alienated, call a rapist, call everything you can think of. We are the most extreme intelligent people inside the United States of America. We are just absolute 101% intelligent. And when I say intelligence, we're talking about think tanks, scholars, and everything you can think of. One of the most sophisticated people in this whole world just so happen to have a little weird shade of brown, because we get natural vitamin D in order for our system to basically grow healthy, right? Our immune system need that vitamin D in order to basically control our immune system in our bodies that way. And we understand everything about, well, at least for me, I'm not speaking for a whole group of people, but at least for me, who study a lot, it's just, we are like the only mammals who doesn't produce our own vitamin C out of the entire human or animal kingdoms out there. And we have to sustain our vitamins every day. We have to sustain all sorts of different health diets and stuff like that in order to keep healthy and have a better, clear conscience that doesn't have any brain fog and things like that. We can just talk freely and categorize hundreds of different topics inside our heads and speak. But this is basically what is happening inside the United States of America, and time is running out. Because inflation is going to absolutely decimate everybody. And there's not going to be anybody saving the white race. There's not going to be anybody saving the black race. There's not going to be anybody saving the brown race. There's going to be a bunch of poor people homeless, and then they're going to have a bunch of agencies who are going to be rich. And don't even get me started on Wall Street. Okay, don't even get me started in Wall Street. Because when it comes to Wall Street in New York City, like, I've been there in that rabbit hole. I've been in every hole in New York City. I'm talking about hedge fund manager, institutional banking, money laundering, and everything. I can talk about all day long. And strategies of investment opportunity, insider trading that, political prostitutes operate with. I know all of their dirty tricks. So I don't want to get myself in trouble with that, but that's all I can say for now. But trust me, there's going to be two sets of classes of people inside this nation. There's going to be the extreme poors who are in each other's throat fighting over race, and then there's going to be the extreme wealthy who's going to be the intelligent people that lives in Cook Islands, in the Caribbeans, and the European Union, who's going to stock up as much money as possible while taking a piss on all of us who are in each other's throat talking about saving the white race or saving the black race or all these other bullshit. So just prepare the best you can. Don't fall for the traps of division, because when you do, you're going to put this nation into a lot of shit. You are basically stabbing America on the back, because a lot of brown people, especially Italians, and who controls a lot, and a lot of hedge fund managers who live in Canada as well, are just so happen to be a little bit brown, and all the CEOs of Google are brown, and they just look Mexican. They look like rapists, in the eyes of a conservative. So just be very cautious, because those people have access to AI systems, and they have access to simulation devices for engineering, for weapon warfare, chemical warfare. And if you piss somebody off like Bill Gates, if you piss somebody off like the CEO of Google, if you piss somebody off like hedge fund managers, or if you piss a brown person in New Mexico who just so happens to be an Indian, like, it's really hard to differentiate between Native Americans and some Mexicans. And they have top billionaires living in Nevada, in the middle of fucking nowhere in the desert, who are brown because it's really fucking hot there. And if you piss those people off, they are gonna sell this fucking nation out, okay? And they got trillions and billions of dollars in funds. And you don't want to piss those people off, because you got a bunch of conservative Bible Belts who doesn't have any funds necessary to stop a chemical warfare. And now we got COVID-19, we got monkeypox, we got all sorts of airborne AIDS diseases that's killing almost 50% of the United States of America, the population itself. And everybody's just like, oh, I don't know what is happening. I don't know what is happening. It's just like, those were the rapists that you were talking about the other day. They got together and they're fucking killing you. Like, common sense, hello? Like, so now we have almost 250,000 Germans died in Germany. Almost 350,000 people in the UK died. Almost 500,000 people in Italy died. Almost hundreds and thousands of people died. Businesses got destroyed and everything you can think of. Do you think all these rich billionaires care about small middle class business dying? They don't. Jeff Bezos, another brown dude who's the CEO, is flying their private coaches everywhere internationally. And do you think they care about anything else like that? They don't. Because they profit off of now 90% of the American people sitting at home buying survival gear or dry storable food out of their fucking website. So this is where we're at right now. The psychological warfare that is being put in this nation is leaving a huge mental scar, not only on the first generation, second generation, and it's dividing and radicalizing a bunch of people who are extremely intelligent, okay? You're pissing off a bunch of people with IQs that's over 200, okay? And they have AI systems, sophisticated systems to mastermind a way to depopulate the planet. Because when they hear and when they're attacked, when they feel threatened by certain topics, they feel threatened by people treating them in public and stuff like that. And when I used to hang out with a bunch of CEOs and multi-billion-dollar people over here in Fort Lauderdale on their private hangar, because I used to detail multi-billion-dollar private jets who comes from South America and different places like that. They're not very European. They're not very white. Not that many are. So I would be very cautious, man. Just these people are leaving this nation in a lot of danger, and just prepare and be ready for something, because there's going to be bioweapons that's going to be released real soon. They're already talking about a second stage lockdown real soon, and these guys don't care. Okay, they don't care.